She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. There must be something about a feature.
You should always lock your front doors. A kid living with both of his parents decided to watch a movie for their family weekly movie night. He then gets up to use the restroom. As he is in the restroom, he sees all of the power in the house cuts off, and then he hears two loud thumps. He locks the bathroom door and hears heavy objects being dragged across the hallway. The kid, freaking out, runs out of the bathroom and runs into the restroom. Once he is inside the room, he locks the door. As he locks the door, he jumps in bed and acts like he's asleep and hopes that this person who is in the house will ignore a child sleeping. He closes his eyes and hears the door creak at the same time. He squints his eyes and sees a man with no eyes dragging the bodies of both of his parents. The man dragging his parents sits his mom's dead body in a chair facing him, and then sets the dad's body on the floor facing up. It was almost like whoever was in the house who killed them wanted him to see it. He then sees the man writing something on the wall and then climbs under his bed. He laid there for hours knowing that if he moved a muscle he would end up just like his parents. He finally built up enough courage to read the wall, and the writing on the wall said,
"This is why you should be careful who you marry." Once there was a man who hated his wife, so he came up with a horrifying plan. But he would never expect that she was one step ahead. He lied by saying he wanted to fix their marriage by taking her on a vacation to a hotel near the mountains. There they went to a long hiking trail near a cliff. His plan was to push her and claim it was an accident. But this went terribly wrong. As soon as they arrived near the cliff, his wife said something unexpected. "I know you hate me, but you have no idea how much I hate you." Then she revealed what she had done. Before leaving the hotel that morning, she wrote a note to the hotel manager saying she knew her husband was planning to push her off a cliff, and if anything happened, tell the police. Then she looked up at her husband and said, "Now there's no way you'll convince anyone this was an accident." Horrified, the husband said, "What accident?" But before he could finish, his wife jumped. By the time he went back to the hotel, the police were already waiting. Have you ever met someone who wouldn't take no for an answer? That's what happened to Jillian, but things took a strange and unexpected turn. Jillian always went to this one cafe, and one day she bumped into a young man. His name was Charles. Charles came from a wealthy family and thought that no woman could ever say no to him. He asked Jillian to have coffee with him, and she did. They had a friendly conversation for a while, but by the time the cafe was about to close, Charles gently grabbed Jillian by the hand and asked her out. She said, "I'm sorry, you're just not my type," and left. This made Charles furious. From then on, he'd come to the same cafe every single day to hope that Jillian was there. It got to the point where Jillian would look through the window and see Charles waiting for her. She'd feel uncomfortable and leave. It just seemed like he wouldn't take no for an answer. But things were not so simple. One day, it was the final straw. Charles brought flowers to the cafe and waited for Jillian. When she didn't show up, Charles took the flowers, threw them on the ground, and stomped on them. He yelled, "That's it, I'm gonna make you my girlfriend if it's the last thing I do." The next day, he looked up Jillian's address in the phone book and went to her house. But he could never have expected what he would find there. Follow for part 2. Have you ever met someone who wouldn't take no for an answer? Charles became obsessed with Jillian after she blew him off at the cafe. Charles was the type of man who couldn't accept that anyone might reject him, so he found Jillian's address from the phone book and went to her house. He knocked on the door many times until he heard Jillian's voice say, "Charles, what the heck are you doing?" Charles replied, "I don't get why you wouldn't go out with me. We had such a great conversation in the cafe." Jillian replied, "I already told you, you're just not my type. But if you really want to know what my type is, I can show you." Then she opened the door. Charles stepped in. "You see that door at the end of the hallway? Go in there and you'll see the type of man I like." Charles eagerly went in and saw a staircase leading down to the basement. What happened next would shock anyone. When he got to the bottom of the stairs, he smelled a horrible rotting smell. Then he saw that he was surrounded by 12 or 13 bodies nailed to the wall. All of them were headless. On the table against the wall, their heads were arranged in a row. Suddenly, Charles felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around and saw Jillian with an axe. Jillian swung the axe, and as Charles's head flew across the room, Jillian picked it up, looked it dead in the eye, and said, "Now you're my type."
Don't open your eyes. On the last day of every month, close the blinds or curtains before you sleep. If in the middle of the night you hear a tapping noise at your window, don't open your eyes. If you're one of the unlucky ones, you'll hear the pebble sound at your window. It's not a friend, just keep your eyes shut. The sound will get louder, the tapping will get faster and faster. Don't let your curiosity get the better of you. Don't move. It'll lose its patience, it'll start thumping the window. Your window will shake and shudder, and the noises will only get louder. It will furiously pound the window and shake the panes. Don't worry, the window won't break, but for goodness sake, don't open your eyes. No matter how scared you are, no matter how badly you want to scream, pretend you don't hear, pretend you're still asleep. After a while, the noises will stop. Don't fall for it, keep your eyes shut. Try to sleep if you can. Don't get up, don't open your eyes until the sun comes up. Those who do open their eyes, well, no one really knows what happens.
This is why you should not listen to your teacher. Once something terrifying happened to Sophia when she got to school. She went to class as usual when her teacher burst into the room and said, "Sophia, I have some bad news." She was shocked and embarrassed to be called out like that in front of her whole class. Her teacher then said, "Get your things, I just got off the phone with your father. He said your mom was in a horrible accident and he's gonna pick you up now and take you to the hospital." Sophia instantly froze in horror. She tried to explain, but her teacher kept interrupting her. "Why are you just standing around? Get your things now." But Sophia wouldn't move. She knew something wasn't right. She said, "I don't have a father. He passed away long ago and I never got to meet him. I was raised by a single mother all my life." To this day, Sophia still doesn't know who that man was claiming to be her father and what he planned to do if she had gone with him.
This is why you should always keep your phone charged. A girl named Marissa came home from school at around 3 p.m. She walked in the door and told her mom that some random number kept calling her all day. Her mom told her the person may have the wrong number and just to ignore it. Marissa said okay and begins to do her homework. A couple hours later, she receives a phone call from the same number. Marissa answers it this time and says, "Hello?" The man then says, "We finally found you. Don't worry, bunny." Marissa begins to panic and tells her mom what just happened. Her mom's face goes blank and says, "What did the man just call you?" Marissa says, "He called me bunny." Her mom yells and says, "Grab your stuff, we need to leave." Marissa, confused, packs her things and gets into the red car. Her mom begins driving fast and turns on the radio. The radio says, "The baby named Marissa who was kidnapped in the hospital 10 years ago has been found and police are searching for a red car." Marissa looks at the woman and says, "Who are you?" The woman looks back.
It's what she finds in the kitchen that's really scary. In the early 90s, a young girl was sleeping in her mom's bed when she suddenly woke up for no reason. She looked at her door and she saw her very affectionate cat kind of meowing down the hall as if someone was coming up to pet it, but she was next to her mom and they were the only ones in the house. The girl shakes her mom awake and points to the cat just as a man is walking past the door and disappears into the room across the hall. Before the man could come back out and find them, they both jump out the window, run across the street, and call the police. When the police arrive, the guy is nowhere to be found, but they do discover that the front door was unlocked, so that had to be the way he got in and out. But the mother swears up and down that she locked that door before she went to bed. A week later, the mother's cleaning their kitchen and she opens up the water heater closet where she finds this notebook that inside is their names and pictures of them in it, along with a pair of surgical gloves. Which means someone had snuck in at some point, was living in that closet spying on them, and then walking around their house at night.
If a package arrives at your door, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Gabby who received a mysterious package in the mail. There was no name and address written on it, so she had no idea where it came from. She opened it anyways, and inside was a DVD with no title or cover on the case. His friends thought it was funny and began laughing, but Gabby just sat there with a terrified look in her eyes. Her friends arrived and none of them knew what the mysterious package was, so they decided to watch the DVD together. Immediately, they were surprised at what they saw. If a website ever asks you these questions, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Masha who heard that there's a new service that gives everyone free internet access, so she decided to use it, but this would lead to something horrifying for Masha and her family. After she connected to this internet service, a web page popped up asking her to register some information, but the questions were oddly personal. It asked, "What's your usual mode of transportation?" with a photo of a bus, a boat, a train, and a plane. Masha took her bike to school every day, so she clicked on the train instead. But the next day, the local news showed that there was a horrific train crash that killed everyone on board. Masha thought that this was a coincidence, but soon she'd realize that she made a deadly mistake. Later, she needed to use the internet again, so she logged back in. This time it asked, "What kind of home do you live in?" along with 4 different pictures of different types of homes. She clicked apartment even though her and her family lived in a house. And the next day, the apartment building near her school burned down. The police suspected arson. Then she went back to the internet server one last time, but this time it showed a photo of her mother, father, sister, and herself with the question, "Who is your favorite family member?"
So my boyfriend and I just bought a house. It's pretty cute on the outside, but the inside needs some work. I've been letting him work on like bigger stuff, like renovating the kitchen. He wants to turn it into the master bedroom. And I have been on wallpaper removal duty. It's kind of weird because almost everything is covered in wallpaper, like the ceilings, the walls, like everything. But I am kind of having fun peeling it off. It's like when you get a sunburn on your shoulders and you're like peeling the skin off, you know? But anyway, what I realized once I started peeling was that under each section of wallpaper, there's a name and a date. So I got curious and Googled one of the names and the dates. And what came up was a missing persons report. So I looked up another one and same thing. The date on the wall would always match the date that the person went missing. So I wrote down all the names that I had come across so far, and they are all missing people. I was in shock, but I turned it into law enforcement, and now we're not allowed in the house. And I also just got a call that we are not able to return to the house for quite some time. Because as it turns out, the wallpaper isn't wallpaper. It's skin.
This is why you should never go to sleep early. Once there was a girl named Rebecca who shared a bedroom with her sister. But one night something terrifying happened. Something no one can explain. Her sister would always go to sleep early because of work, but one night Rebecca felt exhausted from school, so she decided to sleep early too. She could have never expected the horrifying things this would lead to. When she opened her bedroom door, the lights were already off and her sister was in bed. She asked, "Are you asleep already? I still have to shower." Her sister replied, "Lie down. It's too late, shower in the morning." Rebecca said, "No, but her sister interrupted her. "I said lie down." This time her voice was much angrier. Annoyed, Rebecca went into the bathroom anyways, but found someone was already in there. Then her mom came out of the living room. "Dad's taking a long time in there, huh?" Rebecca said, pointing to the bathroom door. But her mom looked confused. "No, he's in the living room with me watching TV." Rebecca stopped. That's when the bathroom door opened and her sister stepped out. To this day, Rebecca still wonders who was in her bedroom and what would have happened if she had lied down like it told her to. This is why you should always be honest. Once there was a bus driver who made a horrible mistake, but the way he tried to fix it was even worse. So this bus driver worked for the local county hospital. One day he was driving 20 patients to the insane asylum when he got thirsty. So he decided to stop the bus on the side of the road to get a drink. But when he got back on the bus, he realized what a terrible mistake he made. The entire bus was empty. All the patients had escaped and was nowhere to be found. Worried he would lose his job, the driver came up with an idea. Something he would come to regret years later. He drove the empty bus to a nearby bus stop and waited for people to get on the bus. Then he drove them all to the insane asylum and said that they were especially delusional and needed to be restrained. Many months later, the staff finally realized what was going on, but by then it was too late. A lot of those people were actually pushed to insanity, and to this day, the real patients still have not been found.
I'm 22 and my sister Anna, 21, is special needs. She has severe autism, and while she is verbal, most of her communication is physical, like sign language, due to her social discomfort. She does speak around family though, and has pretty bad cognitive skills. She can't comprehend boundaries and lives with our parents so they can best watch her. I'm getting married in 3 months. We planned a simple wedding and reception at my fiancé Michael's parents' barn and farm. Since it's all going to be DIY and we aren't planning on anything too expensive, we can do things pretty quickly since flowers, food, and decor will be provided by his family. I sent out invites last week and I asked Anna not to come. I told my parents I understood that would mean they might not show up, but it was just a heads up. Why no Anna? Because she has an issue touching Michael and trying to kiss him. At times when we were at my parents' house, Anna would try to grab Michael's hands, try to lean in to kiss him, or would have really bad shutdowns if she wasn't allowed to be directly next to him. We've tried speaking to her, but there's only so much we can do when she really doesn't understand. I told my parents I just want one day for Michael to be my partner and not Anna's comfort person. They called me selfish and asked how I expected them to agree to something like this. They told me Anna is disabled and may never experience a wedding of her own while I have Michael for probably the rest of our lives. She'll have no one, and that Michael and I can be a little bit more understanding to the reality of her life. Later on, my parents called me letting me know that they won't be coming and it's best that I don't bring Michael around anymore since I've chosen some man over my sister. They told me that Anna wanting to kiss Michael and hug him is normal for a woman her age and she doesn't understand what her feelings mean. I suggested they try to redirect her during the wedding, but they said that Michael is going to be family to her and he needs to get over it. I suggested they watch the wedding via web and they said that it's not fair and they deserve to see things in person. I asked if I could pay for someone with proper credentials to watch her that day while they attend, and they asked me what I would do when they died and if I'd pawn her off every time. I dropped the unfortunate truth bomb that I don't want to put any more of my life aside for Anna. I did it up until I turned 18 and Anna is not my life's responsibility and I won't be her keeper. I assured them that I pay for her care, but if she's okay doing this to Michael, then I worry if I ever choose to have children and what she'd do to them. They said I was sick for suggesting she'd do anything to my future children and hung up on me. They sent me a lengthy text telling me not to contact them until I could do the right thing. Am I the asshole for not wanting my disabled sister at my wedding?
This is why you should always lock your doors. A class was playing a game of Kahoot when they heard a voice on the intercom say, "This is not a drill. Go into lockdown." The students huddled in the back of the classroom and then the power went off. Minutes later, the students heard the sound of a man screaming at the top of his lungs, running down the hallway. The lunatic man started banging on the lockers and his screams gradually got louder. He then started banging on the classroom window, yelling, "Open up." He eventually left, and 10 minutes later, a voice on the intercom said, a mentally ill person had entered the school and attacked the lady at the front desk. The staff did a sweep of the school and still couldn't find him, so they locked the doors and resumed class. Later that night, one of the janitors went into the utility closet when this happened.
This is why you should always save your videos on Snapchat. In a small town in Indiana, Abigail Williams and Liberty German were taking a small hike in the woods. The town the two grew up in was very small, so not much really happened. The two walked the trails they always would, admiring the trees and having small conversation. They knew Liberty's grandfather would soon pick them up, so they tried not to wander too far. 30 minutes later, Liberty's grandfather arrived at the location, but the girls were nowhere to be found. Panic began to set in because the girls were officially reported missing missing to the police. Police searched the trails for hours, but nothing turned up. That was until the next morning when both of the girls' lifeless bodies were found inside of a ditch. Detectives turned to social media to see if they could find anything, and what you're about to hear will give you chills. One video they found was Liberty recording a man following them because the two felt uncomfortable. And the audio of the video was even more disturbing than that. Take a listen.